You're standing on a muddy battlefield, gripping whatever weapon you can find when you see it approaching. A wall of interlocked shields moving toward you like an unstoppable machine of death. Behind those shields are men who have trained since childhood for this exact moment. You think you understand combat. You think your weekend martial arts classes prepared you for real fighting. You think modern military training gives you an edge over ancient warriors. You're about to discover just how catastrophically wrong you are. The Viking shield wall would crush your modern confidence so completely that you would understand why entire armies fled in terror at the mere sight of this formation. Your sophisticated 21st century mindset means absolutely nothing against 800 years of perfected battlefield brutality. Let me paint you the real picture of what made these warriors so terrifyingly effective. Because everything you think you know about Viking combat is probably wrong. The shield wall, or skjaldborg in Old Norse, emerged in Scandinavia around 793 AD and represented the most sophisticated infantry formation of the early medieval period. This wasn't random barbarian charging. This was military engineering at its most lethal. Archaeological evidence from sites like Repton and York shows that Vikings perfected this formation through centuries of constant warfare across Europe, from the monasteries of Ireland to the rivers of Russia. At 7 years old, Viking boys began training with wooden shields and practice swords. By 10, they were learning the precise footwork that would keep them alive in formation. By 15, they could maintain shield wall integrity while advancing over rough terrain, in rain, in snow, while arrows fell around them like deadly hail. By 20, they were veterans of multiple campaigns who could read battlefield conditions like you read road signs. Take Ragnar Lothbrok's documented raids between 845 and 865 AD. Contemporary Frankish chronicles describe Viking formations that maintained perfect cohesion while crossing rivers, scaling fortifications, and fighting uphill against superior numbers. These weren't Hollywood berserkers running wild. These were disciplined soldiers executing tactical maneuvers that required months of coordinated practice. Studies of skeletal remains from Viking burial sites reveal bone density 2.3 times greater than modern athletes. Analysis of arm bone thickness shows grip strength levels equivalent to professional climbers and rowers combined. The archaeological evidence from weapon graves demonstrates that the average Viking warrior carried a shield weighing between 18 and 22 pounds for just hours at a time, while maintaining formation precision that would exhaust trained modern soldiers in minutes. Modern military formations focus on firepower and technology. Viking shield walls were about pure physical domination through coordinated muscle and bone. While contemporary soldiers rely on equipment and communication devices, Vikings developed an intuitive battlefield awareness that let them fight as a single organism. Excavations at Stamford Bridge show evidence of shield walls that held formation. For over 6 hours of continuous combat, everything you think you know about medieval warfare from movies and games is wrong. The reality is terrifying. Vikings didn't charge screaming into battle. They advanced in silence, shields locked, spears protruding between the gaps like the spines of some massive predator. The psychological impact was so devastating that the Anglo-Saxon chronicle records entire armies surrendering without fighting when they saw the Skjaldborg approaching. Archaeological analysis of Viking shields reveals construction techniques using layered wood, leather, and iron that created defensive tools capable of stopping crossbow bolts, sword strikes, and spear thrusts, while remaining light enough for precise maneuvering. These shields weren't just protection, they were weapons. The iron boss in the center could crush skulls with a single punch. The rim could break arms and snap necks. The Vikings perfected fighting techniques that modern combat sports have never even attempted. Shield binding, where warriors would hook their shield behind an enemy's shield and twist, exposing the opponent to spear thrusts. Shield wall rotation, where the entire formation would pivot to present fresh fighters to the front, while wounded warriors fell back to recover. Boar snout formation, where the shield wall would form a wedge capable of punching through enemy lines like a spear tip through flesh. Consider the Battle of Hastings in 1066, where Harold Godwinson's Anglo-Saxon shield wall held against Norman cavalry for over 8 hours before finally breaking. Archaeological evidence from the battlefield shows that the Vikings had taught these techniques to their Saxon enemies, and even then, it took a full day of sustained assault to crack their formation. The Norman chroniclers described the sound of the shield wall as thunder that never ceased, with the constant hammering of weapons against wood and iron creating a noise so intense that horses refused to approach. The training regimen was beyond brutal by any modern standard. Viking warriors practiced formation fighting in all weather conditions, often while fasting for days at a time. They would march 20 miles in full armor, then immediately engage in combat exercises that lasted until exhaustion. The weak didn't survive this process. Only men capable of functioning at peak performance while severely wounded, dehydrated, and psychologically stressed could earn their place in the shield wall. DNA analysis of Viking remains from mass graves shows evidence of systematic physical conditioning that altered their bone structure over generations. These weren't just strong men. These were humans who had evolved differently from modern populations. Their muscle attachment points were larger, their bone density was greater, and their cardiovascular systems showed adaptations similar to high-altitude populations. Centuries of warfare had literally bred better warriors. The weapon mastery went far beyond basic spear and shield work. Vikings trained with seax knives for close-quarters combat when the shield wall collapsed into individual melees. They practiced with throwing axes that could punch through armor at 30 feet. They mastered the use of the langseax, a long knife designed specifically for the tight spaces of shield wall combat where spears became useless. Modern martial artists studying these techniques find them almost impossible to execute effectively, even after years of practice. But here's what makes this truly terrifying for any modern person. The psychological conditioning required to stand in a shield wall goes beyond anything you've experienced. While you panic if your internet goes down for an hour, these warriors trained themselves to remain calm while men died screaming inches from their faces. While you feel stressed by traffic jams, they learned to maintain formation discipline while watching their brothers get their throats cut by enemy spears. The mental toughness was systematic and brutal. Viking training involved practice fights with real weapons, where serious injury was expected. Young warriors had to prove they could maintain shield wall position while bleeding from multiple wounds. They practiced fighting while exhausted, hungry, cold, and outnumbered. Modern psychological studies of extreme stress tolerance show that this kind of conditioning creates neural pathways that simply don't exist in contemporary humans. Contemporary accounts from the Battle of Maldon in 991 AD describe Viking shield walls advancing through arrow storms that would have broken modern military units. These weren't men with advanced body armor and medical support. These were warriors who had trained themselves to ignore pain, fear, and fatigue through years of systematic exposure to violence that would hospitalize modern soldiers. Technical analysis reveals the precise biomechanics that made shield walls so effective. The stance required perfect weight distribution across both legs, with the shield arm locked in position that could absorb impacts equivalent to car crashes while maintaining grip strength for hours. The spear work demanded shoulder stability and core strength that elite modern athletes would find impossible to maintain under combat stress. The mathematical precision of shield wall geometry was staggering. Each warrior maintained exactly 18 inches of frontage, with shields overlapping by precisely 4 inches to prevent enemy weapons from finding gaps. The spear length was calculated to extend exactly 3 feet beyond the shield line, creating a killing zone that enemy forces couldn't cross without taking casualties. Modern computer modeling of these formations shows they achieved nearly 90% defensive efficiency against frontal assaults. Archaeological excavations at Lindisfarne reveal that Vikings calculated optimal shield wall depth based on enemy force composition. Against cavalry, they deployed 8 ranks deep. Against infantry, 5 ranks provided maximum efficiency while conserving manpower for flanking maneuvers. Against archer formations, they used a wedge formation that minimized target area while maximizing forward momentum. This wasn't instinctive fighting. This was mathematical warfare executed by men who understood battlefield geometry better than most modern military officers. Studies of weapon effectiveness show that Viking spears could penetrate modern ballistic armor at close range. The ashwood shafts were specifically selected for flexibility that would absorb impact while maintaining structural integrity. The iron spear points were forged using techniques that created edge retention superior to many contemporary steel alloys. These warriors carried weapons that could punch through medieval plate armor like it was cardboard. Modern testing of Viking combat techniques by experimental archaeologists demonstrates that trained shield wall fighters could maintain formation speed of 3 miles per hour across rough terrain while keeping perfect alignment. Contemporary soldiers in full gear struggle to maintain half that pace over similar distances. The cardiovascular conditioning required exceeds anything demanded by modern military training. You wouldn't last 30 seconds against a Viking shield wall. Not because you lack courage, not because you lack intelligence, because you lack 800 years of evolutionary pressure that created humans specifically adapted for close-quarters combat. Your nervous system, your muscle memory, your pain tolerance, your situational awareness, everything that makes you human has been shaped by peaceful civilization. The first thing that would destroy you is the noise. Modern combat veterans describe the sound of a shield wall engagement as unlike anything in contemporary warfare. The constant hammering of metal on wood, the screaming of wounded men, the grunting of warriors pushing against each other with superhuman effort, the wet sounds of edged weapons finding flesh. Your brain would overload trying to process the auditory chaos while maintaining tactical awareness. Then comes the smell. The metallic tang of blood mixed with sweat, leather, and human waste as men lose control of their bowels in terror. The acrid smoke from burning buildings nearby. The overwhelmingly animal scent of dozens of men in peak physical exertion. Your modern senses, accustomed to air conditioning and personal hygiene, would revolt against this assault on your nervous system. The visual overload would finish you. Trying to track multiple spear points while maintaining your own shield position, while watching for flanking attacks while stepping over bodies while avoiding slipping in blood and mud. Your peripheral vision, trained for safe suburban environments, cannot process the three-dimensional battlefield awareness required for shield wall survival. You would tunnel vision within seconds and die shortly after. While you struggle to focus during yoga class, Viking warriors could maintain perfect formation awareness while spears whistled past their ears. While you feel overwhelmed by multiple tasks at work, they could track 20 different opponents while coordinating attacks with their shield brothers. Your brain simply isn't wired for the kind of multitasking required to survive medieval battlefield conditions. The reality is that you would freeze, not from cowardice, but from sensory overload. The noise of clashing metal, the smell of blood and sweat, the sight of serious injuries happening in real time, the physical exhaustion of maintaining combat stance, the psychological pressure of life or death decisions every few seconds. Your modern mind would shut down long before your body gave out. So when you're standing on that muddy battlefield, watching the shield wall approach with mechanical precision, remember this: you're not facing individual warriors. You're facing a collective intelligence that has been refined through centuries of combat evolution. Every step, every movement, every tactical decision has been tested in real battle against the most dangerous opponents medieval Europe could produce. That approaching wall of shields represents something your comfortable modern existence has never prepared you to face. Pure, systematic, perfected violence executed by men who learned to kill before they learned to read. And in those final seconds before impact, you'll understand exactly why the Viking shield wall conquered half of Europe.